Hello, my name is Justin Bright. Welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. And we return now to our Lunar Returner, which is doing its little impression of the Luna 16 spacecraft, which has landed on the moon and has been doing science for the better part of a month. So we've had two lunar nights and 2 lunar days, basically, because it's at about a 2-week cycle, roughly, for each, as I've discovered. So let's see how our science is doing. Looks like we still have 1 more day, and then we're going to finish up this magnetic scan 2. That did already finish up our magnetic scan 1, which is very, very nice. So yeah, just 1 more day in advance. I think we don't have anything else coming up quite yet. And there we go. We have finished that, and we have our next vessel is completed down on the ground, so we'll deal with that in just a moment. But that got us a ton of science, which is just fantastic. We have good signal, we have sunlight, we have battery, everything is good. So what we want to do now is we want to make sure that these surface samples are going to be in our return capsule. So let's go ahead and move those up. Transfer data here. All right, done. It's a lot easier than what Luna 16 got to do, because like I may have mentioned in the previous video about this, it had a scoop arm that it used to dig out a sample and then dump it onto its own head. Basically, it had kind of a roughly vaguely similar shape, but it was a lot busier, a lot more bits and bobs hanging off of it. So anyways, yeah, we are going to bring this back. We are bringing back about 80 grams of lunar surface regolith, which is actually a little bit less than what the Luna 16 took. I was saying that we were going to get more, but this is actually slightly less than what the real Luna 16 was managed to bring back. It brought back about 100 grams. But this is going to be plenty. This is going to satisfy our contract for excellent science from the surface of the moon. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of those ones that's going to make us do this a couple times. But we will see how that goes. All right, so for now, let's get ourselves moving back towards Earth. All right, so since the landing legs and everything else are going to be discarded anyways, I don't see any reason why not to just go ahead with them attached for now. So we are going to launch, use up the last of that fuel in these tanks, because we do have a higher than 1 thrust to weight ratio, and we are going to get ourselves on our way. Most landers like this don't actually do that. They leave stuff on the ground, but their equipment on the ground, so that you could theoretically go back and look at them again. Like we sent missions back to some of our late Surveyor landers, for example. But these are going to kick off and explode or just scatter into the wind, or the solar wind, perhaps, in any case. So I'm not super worried about leaving them here for posterity. We still have this big chunky centaur up here for that. So yeah, we are just going to kick this off and then let things drop, and that will be just fine. So 3, 2, 1, and we have liftoff, and I grumble at the legs once again, which I'm wondering if that wasn't what caused me to kick off like that. I would not be that surprised, really. All right, so we're just rising real slowly. With this, we're probably just going to use these engines to get us up into just push us straight up for a little bit, and then I'm going to pitch over here shortly. Yeah, I just wanted our thrust weight is low enough that I wanted to not pitch over too fast, so we don't head back down towards the ground too quickly. All right, so we are pushing our way up and away, and that has kicked off. So we are going to kick off the landing equipment, and now we are just flying back with the return spacecraft itself. Fabulous. So we're going to want to get a fairly, not like super high, but we're going to want to get a little bit higher up off of the surface of the moon, because I've had trouble setting up my return trajectory if I was too low. Not sure if that's just me doing something wrong, but my normal return trajectories don't seem to work as well from the moon in very low orbits as they normally do. So we are going to be trying to reach up a little bit. it shouldn't take too much of our delta V to make all of this happen. So we've got plenty of extra, is what I'm saying. All right, let's pitch it over. Start picking up some orbital velocity. All right, so we have achieved our target apolloon of 250 kilometers, and now we are just going to go ahead and circularize real quick at our next apolloon. There we go, no problem at all. And that still leaves us plenty of delta V to get back home. It shouldn't be much more than 1,000 to actually make our return burn and put us into a trajectory that gets us safely back to Earth's surface. So yeah, with the destruction of our lower stage, just the way that I had constructed this, I just threw away some of the science experiments that I didn't think we were going to need. Luna 16 actually was able to do science even after the upper stage lifted off, and that is the kind of thing that you are losing when you build like that, where you just have a bunch of disposable stuff that you're throwing away just to reduce the mass on your way back home. So that's not like super great, but it's also not a big deal because of the way that our KSP works. We don't actually care about science once we've achieved the nominal numbers on our Kerbalism. Like, so okay, you've got 100% of the science, that's it, that's all you need. That's obviously not how it works in real life, where you can get interesting data over time, and you can do interesting things with it, and it can teach you things for much longer than the initial readings that you would get by tagging on the surface. So there we go. That is our orbit. It's pretty darn terrible for what we need to do, but I think we can make it work anyways. So just like my normal return home kind of trajectory from a moon in KSP, like if I was coming home from Minmus or whatever, it would be something like this, and I think this is probably mostly fine. Let's see. Okay, you get something like that, and there we go. This actually works. That actually works just fine. So let's plan for that. I don't know what it was. I just have had in the past, I have had some weird trouble with like every trajectory I was trying to get, like that seemed to work. I would be doing it focus on Earth, and I would come back and it would definitely be plowing me through the surface of the moon. So just a slight difference in my expectations or something there. But yeah, this is going to put us into a 60-ish kilometer return trajectory, which is just about perfect. All right, so we are burning away, making our return towards Earth. I see that we are somehow just slightly out of balance at this point, but I'm not terribly stressed about it. It seems to be the RCS is able to handle any variance in our balance to make sure that we don't spin out of control. So don't have to worry too much about that, but that's fine. All right, just wrapping up this burn, and let's go just take a look at our return trajectory. It looks like we are going to smash into the surface. That's not as good as it could be. Point ourselves orbital prograde, and then we can adjust from here. I'm just pushing out with our RCS, and that's doing just plenty. So we're going to say something like 40... 60. Yeah, that's about what we do with astronauts, so I don't see why it wouldn't work for our automated return capsule. Yeah, so there we go. We are on our way back, and this has been a very successful mission so far. This thing has returned a whopping 315 science on its own for just this particular mission, and it has just been a fantastic success so far. All right, just 20 or so minutes to our perigee as we come down over the surface of Earth. Beautiful. And now we will find out if my new landing architecture works as well as I hope it does. So we are going to get ourselves pretty darn close to the surface. Oops. We're going to fix our clouds, because sometimes they get all messed up, but that's totally fine. Yeah, so we are going to just point ourselves surface retrograde here in a moment, and I'm going to detach this little science capsule probe that holds our samples shortly. It has no control whatsoever, so I just want to make sure that we are dead on as we are coming down, and we are fairly close to our to the top of the atmosphere, because I want it to be basically held in place and able to redirect itself right into the last moment. Because as you can see, it has shifted off of that retrograde marker fairly significantly, and we don't want it to have to adjust too much when we are about to touch down. Okay, so there we go. That's going to be good enough. I am just going to let it settle itself in as much as possible. We're going to transfer all the data here one more time, and now it's time to say farewell. I did put a little kick on that decoupler so that we could, in fact, separate and get away from our spacecraft. I don't want it to tumble up and like kick this out of alignment. That would be really pretty bad. We're just going to arm our parachute as we start coming down. So we've got a fairly low perigee. It has actually gone down pretty dramatically since I kicked off that stage here, and I didn't notice it had decreased quite so much, but that's hopefully fine. So we are coming in, but I have left a decent amount. Well, actually, no, I have left practically no ablator on this spacecraft because that is how I tested it. Right. That is actually what caused me to have such trouble with the Gemini spacecraft. Because when I've run this test before with a small payload like this, I was able to shed all of our velocity using practically no ablator. And now I'm really wondering if that's actually going to remain true, although we are shedding this velocity at just frightful speeds, so it looks like this is going to be just fine. But yeah, on larger spacecraft, this is not the case. You should not extrapolate this to mean that you only need like the bare minimum of heat shield ablator on your Gemini return spacecraft. For example, you might kill a bunch of astronauts. But yeah, there we go. We've gone through the difficult part of the re-entry and shed 9 kilometers or so of delta V. We've shed 9 kilometers of velocity by spending 9 kilometers of delta V inside the atmosphere, or something like that. There's a subtle distinction there. Delta V, of course, being the measure for the change in velocity. So yeah, we are coming down, and I am not terribly stressed about the rest of this. I think we're going to leave this heat shield attached, I think, as we descend down into the further into the atmosphere. As I'm time warping us with physics acceleration down, you can see that we are now tumbling in the atmosphere, which is actually slowing us down a bunch more than it otherwise would. I feel like I've seen this behavior before on capsules with this shape, but I'm also... it's probably fine. Like, the chute should open at the last moment, just like they were designed to do so, and there's no, like, mechanics for, like, tangling your parachute cords and things like that. That would require that you actually have physics detection on these lines, and that sounds terrible. Not only does that sound really bad for destroying a bunch of spacecraft, but it also sounds like a nightmare for your CPU and trying to make these actually have collision detection. They would behave very strangely, because they wouldn't behave like strings. They would behave like little steel wires that are rigid in shape or something, probably. That would be the easiest way to do it, I have to imagine. But touchdown! We have touchdown and continued rolling. Where you going, dude? Okay, are you done now? All right, great. I was a little bit worried that was just going to keep rolling on forever. But yeah, we have made it down, and contract complete, lunar landing and sample return, mission success. You've safely landed on the moon and returned valuable science data from the surface. The samples that you returned will be studied for a long time into the future. Fantastic, mission complete. We finally actually managed to get a solid design of a return vehicle that I'm hoping to use not only here in the future, but also on planets like Venus and Mars. ignition and liftoff of a Tela Delta rocket that is bringing up a test payload to geostationary orbit. So hopefully, this will actually finish up this contract that I've been fighting with for what feels like forever. Let's go ahead and accelerate this a little bit. If this doesn't fail for like if this engine doesn't fail for the third time, then this will be a relatively simple launch that you've seen a million times, but in any case, this is meant to be one of those simple contracts that we just kind of bang out really quick so that we can move on towards the real prize, which is getting up a geostationary satellite constellation that will help us with low Earth communications and also communications out towards the moon. Technically interplanetary, I suppose, but I honestly really think that it's mostly just for the low Earth orbit stuff. And it's also a precursor. We have booster separation and boop, and they are off. It's also a bit of a precursor towards our lunar communications network, because I would like to put something into something kind of like a imitation of the Lagrange points that are in front of and behind the moon's orbit around Earth, which is going to give us the ability to talk to spacecraft that are on the surface of the moon. I'm probably going to do that for a good amount of our coverage. That will give us a much broader bit of coverage than we already have now. And with maybe 1 or 2 satellites that actually orbit the moon, we should be able to get pretty close to full coverage, or at least close enough for the work that we are going to be doing. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, but first we have to get through not 1 but 2 of these geostationary test contracts. This is the Geostationary Commercial Communications Satellite, and we finally actually have the correct payload on board. I just launched this without that payload, and I had to roll it back and that whole thing, and it was very unpleasant. But we are on our way now, and we have everything that we need, and the Delta upper stage that we are using, that we have used so seldom, is very, very capable. It's going to leave us with a ton of extra Delta V after we have kicked off our our core booster stage there. And we can see now that what's on top is basically just a big purple polygon. That is the dummy mock-up for our geostationary payloads, because it has 700 units of commsat payload on board. So yeah, that is what we are going to be sending up, and because we are using an RL-10 engine, there is no issue with this getting not only into geostationary orbit, but getting into a fairly precise orbit with tons of Delta V remaining. So that should not be any kind of problem. Alright, so we are just now coming down, just a couple more seconds. Free camera mode, and here we go. Perfect. We are in low Earth orbit. Let's go ahead and turn on our little communitron there for better communications. All right. So yeah, this is a fairly old design now that I'm thinking about it, but it's really all that we need for what we're doing here, because this is launching this on a Titan IIIe would be way overkill. The Tela Delta rocket that I just sent up cost less than half, I think, of the funds that costs. So we're able to knock one of these out in like 30 days comparatively, which is actually quite important because we have a lot of really cool stuff coming up. I'll talk about that in a moment. All right, so Ascent guidance completed. Let's just knock out with the maneuver planner all the things that we need. All right, so we are firing up the RL-10 for our transfer to geostationary altitude. If you haven't seen me perform this particular batch of... What the heck is out there? What do you think you're doing with your communications? Is just some like phantom signal out there? Like, what are you talking to out here? This must be some kind of visual bug with real antennas or something. Hard to say. My install is getting a little bit creaky under the weight of all the modifications and updates that I've done to it. I should really slow down on that, trying to chase the latest masters and all that, because my save is getting unstable. We do not want that. So anyways, what I was trying to say If you haven't seen me do one of these before, the process is basically the one that you can find on the RP-1 wiki, and it is to do the following maneuvers in order. So you start out by getting into a nice tight 150 kilometer orbit, so just low Earth orbit, no problem, whatever. Doesn't matter what parameters you use other than that, but you just want it to be very low because it's cheaper to do the subsequent maneuvers from that point. Step 2 is you do what I'm doing now, which is you change your apogee to your geostationary altitude, so 35,793,000 meters, and you do it at the equatorial ascending or descending node, and that will get you to a point where your apogee is going to touch the ascending or descending node, depending on which one you are closest to at the time that you launched. And so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Once you have that, it is very easy to turn that into a circularization that is going to get your altitude correct and also to change your inclination to 0 degrees, and that you can merge using MacLeod's maneuver node editor. And that is basically the easy mode, get yourself to geostationary in, I have to assume, the fewest number of burns possible, because it's the guide was for like an early game get to geostationary. Like, I don't know if there's a more efficient way to do that, but I find this to be a very easy and intuitive thing. Like, all of these steps make perfect sense to me now that I know to do them. So that is how we are going to be getting into our geostationary orbit, and I'm only going to show you this first of the two. I have another one of these that is on its way to being constructed, and we'll probably just zip past that, because what we'd really like to watch is the actual geostationary communication satellite network, which is not ready yet, and we have a lot of things to do in the meantime. But so in good practice, I am pointing us prograde, and I am just trying to use the RCS, weak little RCS that was just intended for ullaging, to finish out our burn a little bit and get up a little bit closer to what the intended altitude is. But I don't think we're actually going to be able to do that unless I, well, maybe 793. Make sure I don't burn off all my RCS while I'm doing this. Yeah, 35793. I want to get as close as possible to the exact perfect altitude. Go. 793. Oh, I can't go backwards. Ha! Right. That's something that's going to be very important on our future geostationary orbiting satellites, is that they have the ability to very finely tune their orbit, because contrary to what I said in my disastrous episode a little while ago, it actually matters quite a great deal what your orbital parameters are in terms of keeping a communications satellite network in the same exact spacing. So we're going to want to make sure that is like correct down to the millisecond, so that it stays put for the years and years that we are going to need it to, because we finally have solar panels and communications dishes that are going to last long enough for us to do that are going to last long enough for it to matter. So that is what we will do. Okay, so the next step, as I mentioned, is to circularize, and I can never remember what the order is for doing this, but circularize and you change your inclination to 0, and you can see that the both maneuvers happen in the same spot. So you open up the MacLeod maneuver node editor, and you can merge next node, and that is the incorrect order. So let's do it the other way around. So we'll start with change inclination. Then we will circularize, and then we will merge, and there you go. Look at that. It's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. It's going to cost us another 1,800 meters per second of delta V out of our 32, so we are doing just fine. All right, and here we go. We have the final ignition of our RL-10 engine that is going to hopefully get us into the proper orbit that is going to allow us to finish this contract. And this is basically, like I said, just a test of our ability to get a large payload into geostationary altitude so that we can sign up a real customer to build a communications satellite network, and we'll talk more about what that first customer might be once it's time to actually run that mission, because it's going to be a little bit special compared to what we're doing now. We're not going to do 3 individual launches, I'll tell you that. So there you go. We are in orbit, and we just need to check the orbit. So this just needs to be make sure that it is stable. And there we go. The contract has been completed successfully. The satellite has been transferred back to the customer. The music cuts out, and then this thing stops obeying the laws of physics. I wish the customers wouldn't do that. But anyways, this commercial communication satellite contract is actually fairly lucrative. Like, not in terms of the massive lunar contracts that we've been looking at. Like, those are in a completely different league. But this is a pretty darn good amount of money for how much we spent. Like, this rocket, I think, cost me like $6,000, $7,000. That doesn't count any of the, like, rollout or integration costs or anything else. But it's really relatively inexpensive and a really good return on investment. But you know, making even 14 times a $10,000 fund investment is really not a good use of our time when we are trying to land people on the moon. So anyways, that is one of these down, and I've got one more coming up that I will just kind of skip over. All right, we've squeaked our way up to over 2 million funds, which I'm not hoarding, I promise, because I've been saving up for the upgrade to our research and development to get to 150 science limit, plus 100% research rate, because the latest update gives you the actual full set of upgrades that you get. So this is something that we've definitely wanted, and I definitely wanted the increase in science research rate. That has been kind of a big bottleneck, and that is a big 25% boost that we just bought ourselves, as well as some other stuff that we needed as well. So very, very cool. The next thing that we need to do, the next big purchase, I think, is going to be our astronaut complex that is going to allow us to place flags. And I talked a lot about what that's about, but ooh, look at that. Shorter training times, shorter R&R times, neat. Okay, yeah, I didn't actually know about that part, but yeah, that's very, very cool. Yeah, so that is coming up as far as an update. Oh, I do have the ability to do another tracking station upgrade. I didn't realize that was ready to go, but that should be all settled in now. So yeah, I honestly didn't realize that I was behind one on the tracking station, and boop, now we are at level 5 in our tracking station, which is going to make our deep space communications even better, which is very exciting. And a couple more points, and there we go. Just keep dumping those into research and development because we need new tech. There's so much cool stuff to do. Just unlocked the very exciting Lunar Orbiter capsules, which has nothing, but is an important step on the way towards mature capsules. It is a beautiful day for a rocket launch. We have here on the pad the Paladin-1 Gemini launch vehicle, redesigned to be much safer for astronauts and send up Johnny Flores and Lisa Kim on their way to fly around the moon. We have ignition. And liftoff! Liftoff of the Paladin-1 Gemini launch vehicle, rising up very nicely. Yes, indeed. So here we have my next attempt to get a couple astronauts around the moon. So we had some trouble with that before, trouble being a bit of an understatement, but the general idea was I was doing the Gemini Advanced concepts, and this is another one. So the one that I was doing before was the launch the astronauts on a Titan II Gemini launch vehicle, and then launch a pretty hefty trans stage on a Titan IIIe, which basically included a nearly fully fueled Centaur. This concept is another one that was used for a lunar flyby mission, and it was to basically just stick a Gemini on top of a Saturn 1B, and then you could attach whatever kind of trans stage for lunar injection that you wanted. And in this case, I've just included my standard Paladin-1 Centaur upper stage that is going to do the work of getting these astronauts out towards the moon. So that is where we are going, and we are launching pretty darn good. We are partway through our first burn, just kind of lifting up and lifting away here. Looks a little bit silly because I'm taking no more chances with the damn heat shields. No more skimping on the heat shield, for goodness sake. And that is going to make this a little bit, we're going to call this less than aerodynamic, having this gigantic bowl on the top of my rocket here. But I'm fairly confident that this thing has enough power to push through that and make this happen anyways. So the nice thing about this, in terms of progression, this rocket system here uses H1 engines, the second configuration, I think. And it has just 6 of those on a fully fueled, I believe, first stage. And then our upper stage, I'm going to unveil that a little bit, but the previous version of it would have worked just fine. Like you could do this with a fairly early set of technology, basically as soon as you open up Gemini, right around that era. Because this has an LR87H2 on here. It has the upgraded version because I have moved a little bit further, but I've demonstrated the capability of that rocket system before. So you could do this, and then it has an RL-10 based Centaur upper stage here. And this is all stuff that you can do on the 350-ton pad. Like, it butts right up against the limits, and you might have to like adjust the utilization of some of your tanks. And we have first stage cutoff and second stage ignition, the beautiful new LR87 LH2 vacuum optimized model with a wonderful increase in specific impulse over the old version. Yeah, like I said, you could do this all on the 350-ton pad, and I'm pretty sure I have my mass savings I took out from this tank here on the second stage, where it was like, if I wanted to fully burn this, it would be like twice as long. I feel like that's right. I don't remember exactly, but that's pretty darn close. Like, it's a huge tank of fuel that this thing can fully burn. It's a very, very cool, very capable engine that was supposed to compete with the J2. But in any case, I've shortened it up because that's how the numbers worked out really well, as far as making sure that we had enough thrust to get off the pad, and where we're spending our time and where we're getting our delta V. So cutting this stage down to get it just underneath the 350-ton weight limit means that you could do this lunar mission years and years earlier than I did on a 350-ton pad, and I'm sure that there are folks that have done even better than that, but I'm pretty happy with this architecture here, even though we are now in the middle of 1973. All right, so accelerating a little bit as we head forward. Johnny Flores, Lisa Kim, we have just kicked off the fairing, so we have that goofy look of this thing just kind of hovering above the upper stage, but you know, we're not going to worry about that too much. But yeah, very capable rocket, my Paladin 1. I'm really quite happy with how it's turned out into my mainstay 350-ton booster. All right, kick off that upper stage and fire up the Centaurs. And the nice thing about this is this will leave us with over 4,000 meters per second of delta V, which makes this a very capable engine indeed. We could send a little bit more of a service module out with the Gemini spacecraft if we wanted to. Right now, this thing is kind of loaded for bear. But the advantage of setting this up on the Saturn 1B analog, the Paladin, is that it allows you to integrate and send the entire Centaur upper stage as a massive service module. So this is roughly analogous to basically like the Apollo capsule and then the big command module underneath and that thing there, but like double in size. Or I think I'm underestimating how big Apollo is. It's a very huge spacecraft. But that's kind of the idea, is that we have this gigantic service module that is able to push us out to the moon and also do maneuvers in orbit of the moon, not in orbit, but on the flyby of the moon, that is going to make sure that we get back exactly how we want to do. All right, just a couple seconds until our Centaur upper stage cuts off here, and there we go. Perfect orbital insertion. That was fantastic. Could not ask for any better. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop. Oh my gosh. Disengage autopilot. All right, so like I said, perfect. Perfect orbital insertion. Oh, Lord. Yeah, so what I think just happened there was the the MacLeod PVG was not satisfied with exactly where we ended up on our orbit, and so it's like, I'm gonna fix it real quick, and then what you saw happened there. So that's great. Off to a good start. So despite any upper stage avionics malfunctions that we may have had, we are in orbit. We have almost 4,200 meters per second of delta V on our Centaur upper stage. We're going to use a big portion of that to get to the moon, and then we are on our way. All right, so this is what MacLeod has given us for just a plain flyby towards the moon. Intercept only, no capture burn, etc. And it's going to just bury us in the surface of the moon, which, you know, not super great. So all we got to do is just add like a couple meters per second of delta V in one direction or another to get a better flyby. And let's try again for that low orbit flyby, because we don't have a lot of science to do in this mission, but a little bit would be fun. So this is kind of what we're looking at. So 3159 meters per second of delta V is going to get us a very nice tight flyby over the surface of the moon, under 100 kilometers. Very cool. I could even go like a little bit, could just make this like a real showboaty mission and do like 50 kilometers over the moon. That'd be fun. All right, so we'll do that like we did last time, and then it's a matter of bending our trajectory so that it faces towards the retrograde vector, basically back towards where the moon is coming from, and that is going to be how we are going to slow ourselves down in the relative to the orbit of Earth. So that is a combination of prograde and radial. There we go. That's not very difficult at all. We have plenty of... we're going to be able to do that fairly easily. Looks like... There's our perigee. Yeah, the nice tight orbit is giving us lots of options. It's making this very easy to do because we are going to be benefiting from the Oberth effect of being very close to the mass of the moon, and also the way that our trajectory bends. It bends naturally towards the direction that we want to go. The other nice thing about this is after we've made our 3159 meter per second burn towards the moon, we technically don't even need this anymore. I think I'm going to keep it with us just in case there's anything that happens, and also so we can use up the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen that is on board. But you'll notice that this second burn is only 300 meters per second. We could do that with Gemini alone, which is very, very cool. All right, looks like we've recovered from our spin from our avionics failure previously, and we are now preparing for our lunar orbit injection burn, which is going to, not lunar orbit, but our lunar flyby injection burn. We are going to be pushing ourselves up to a trajectory where we will meet the moon and zip right on by. As our engines light up, we are preparing now for our Apollo 8 impression, where we are going to be doing our own lunar flyby, although I am not doing any of the goofy trickery with the free return trajectory. I found that with proper maneuver management, we are able to make this happen such that even if this fails at some point on the way between here and there, so long as it doesn't fail like midway on the burn, we should be able to get back on Gemini alone, even if this doesn't work. Although I do like the idea of bringing it with us just in case. And also just as a practice run for what we're going to be doing with other missions, because I don't know, maybe we'll do more stuff with Gemini after this. So we're not quite doing Apollo 8 because we're not actually going to be entering orbit of the moon. For some reason, I thought that Apollo 8 was just a flyby, but that is not actually true. They did enter orbit and then return back to Earth. So that is not what we're doing. We are just doing a flyby because we do not have a service module capable of making that happen yet. That is something that we will be working on sometime soonish. Basically, we're looking into the Saturn V kind of architecture of, at that point, of having a upper stage big enough to just throw something at the moon and then plan to hit the moon, and then have a separate service module that is able to do orbital maneuvers. And that would not be, I mean, I was about to say that would not be hard, but that's like, we only have 1,000 meters per second of extra delta V on this, and that is... that would get eaten up pretty quickly if we had a whole nother engine and all of that. So it's probably a little bit harder to do with a 350 ton on a 350 ton pad. All right, so we're going to cancel all these maneuvers, and that is basically what we're going to be going with for now. And I will, when I hit the sphere of influence of the moon, that is when I will make further adjustments to our trajectory. So now we need to get in our flight position. Wanted to get out into the sun so we can actually see. A very pretty shot, even though my spacecraft is very goofy looking. But yeah, like this extra giant collar is really silly looking, but man, is it going to be better than burning up our spacecraft. Oh man, I'm kicking myself over the loss of those two astronauts. And yeah, so I'm hoping not to have a repeat performance of that on this mission. So we went with the full-on 3-meter heat shield, lunar rated heat shield, because the Gemini heat shield that's lunar rated does not appear until you get to mature capsules, which includes the Apollo spacecraft. And that is going to be in just 32 days. So I wanted to get this mission freaking moving, and then I can do any further redesigns of this spacecraft as we go forward, because this exact mission profile is not one that I'm likely to fly again. The next time I go to the moon, I'm probably going to want to, like, you know, stick around for a minute, do some science, do some other stuff. I would love to have a lot more that I can do out there, and that's going to require a more capable launcher, probably. Although I'm not 100% sure why I wouldn't just throw my astronauts up on top of a Titan 3E. That'll punch them all the way to the moon, that's for sure. All right, so we are just about in our attitude where we are going to be flying to the moon. This is a very comfortable attitude for us, because this puts the radiation of the sun right at our backs, and also puts as much stuff in between our liquid hydrogen fuel and the solar heat as possible, because we do have to worry about burn off on our liquid hydrogen that is in this tank, but it does have a full 50 layers of wrapped MLI, as does the Gemini equipment section. I think it has 30 layers, which is the maximum for that. But that is going to keep the liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen safe for the trip. In my experience, we lose like between 1 and 200 meters per second off of our Centaur upper stage on this flight. But like I said, I'm super not worried about that, because we can do the rest of this mission with Gemini alone. All right, so we have no science to do. As I've mentioned, there's just not a whole lot of extra science that we have. Like, all of the crew-based experiments are low Earth orbit only, and we are already not in we are about to not be in low Earth orbit, and most of the experiments that I have are like days long, so there's no real point in bringing those with us when we are not actually spending much time in low Earth orbit. We are slowly drifting away from Earth. Well, we are hurtling away from Earth at a tremendous velocity, and yeah, so when we do more low Earth orbit operations, then we will do more low Earth orbit science. But until then, I don't see any reason to pack on the extra stuff. We can do a lot of we've got the RP-1 in orbit of the moon that is doing all of the new science there. So we don't really need to stress about bringing those experiments along. So it's just the crude science, which I think mostly comes with Apollo, I have to assume. But yeah, all of the science experiments that I could pack on to the Gemini command pod are space low around the home planet only. So no problems there. That is just how we are going to execute this mission. But Johnny Flores, Lisa Kim seem to be doing well. They are healthy and happy. 2% stressed, says Johnny Flores, but that's fine. Another thing that I've changed is the I've dramatically reduced the solar storm frequency, because that was something that was mentioned on the Discord as something that a lot of folks do. It was at 200%, and I brought it down to like 4. Because it's kind of nonsense to have that just happening constantly, because you should not get a 50% load of radiation in one trip to the moon. From what I've heard, the Apollo capsule didn't even have like any extra radiation shielding. It just had the aluminum hull and all the other construction. They didn't have to take any special precautions to keep radiation from destroying the astronauts on board. So yeah, that's how we're going to do this. I haven't put any shielding on this in anticipation of that, and so we'll see how that works. This will be a little bit of a test. I do know that Kerbalism does model blocking out the sun's radiation by putting your spacecraft between it and your astronauts, so that will do some protection as well. And the last thing before we make our flight is to extend our S-band antenna that is going to do most of our lunar range communications. So yeah, there we go. We are on our way, and this is a dramatically simpler mission than the one where we had to rendezvous and dock and with the Tran stage. So I like it a lot better just for that reason. But I think that is where we are going to have to leave that for now. Seems like a good enough place for a little bit of a cliffhanger before we see what becomes of Johnny Flores and Lisa Kim on their mission around the moon. But yeah, I'm pretty hopeful. This is a much better designed mission, but we will see how that goes next time. So if you all enjoyed this episode, please let me know down in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that, and I will see you next time.